The sheer audacity and strategic depth in this chapter are absolutely staggering. Modon's world is systematically dismantled, first by the MC's brilliant prisoner of war reformation plan from afar, then the Fubo warship turning lakeside camps into infernos with chilling efficiency, followed by Suetu's almost effortless ground sweep. It's a masterclass in total warfare. But what truly leaves me breathless is the seamless pivot to nation building. New commanderies, a booming population boosted by pragmatic policies, and even future-proof capital city planning. Tang Yao's wide-eyed wonder at Han medical and governance. Systems perfectly mirrors my own sense of awe at this burgeoning civilization. And just when you think the dust might settle, the MC is deep in R&D, pushing for bicycles, and sparking unexpected industrial innovations with chain drives. This relentless, almost overwhelming wave of progress is utterly addictive. With Modon a lingering shadow, and the Fubo fleet already aiming for new shores, the calm feels disturbingly fragile. Frame, chain, gears, pedals, tires. Once the parts were assembled, the bicycle had largely taken shape. But to ride it smoothly, you still needed to install a seat and handbrakes. Otherwise, you could only look on helplessly. The Han tribe's leatherworking skills were also highly developed, so crafting a leather seat cushion was a piece of cake. The troublesome part was the few flexible springs under the seat cushion. Those things would require some real effort. You quickly sketched out the blueprint for the seat. Below was the steel tube connecting to the frame. Above that, the spring, mount. Then the springs on top of that, followed by a thin, triangular sheet of iron padded with cork for shock absorption, and finally wrapped in a layer of leather. All set. A basket at the front was also a must. However, to ensure the tribe's people could afford it, costs had to be slashed. Save wherever possible. Only when the price came down could purchasing power go up. So, with a decisive wave of your hand, wicker ones, bamboo ones, let's go with those. Or simply don't add one at all, letting everyone weave their own basket and tie it on. Perfectly fine. The final component, the brakes, was a bit of a headache. Modern bicycle brake cables are ropes twisted from fine steel wires, sheathed in rubber tubing on the outside, much like electrical wires. Given the Han tribe's current level of craftsmanship, trying to manufacture them would likely cause the artisans' hairlines to collectively recede from the stress. So, you racked your brains and came up with two brake designs. One was a high-end version with cable-actuated rubber block brakes, and the other was a budget version using a rigid iron rod linkage, a system that would take one back to the days of old Phoenix bicycles. The iron rod version was cheap, all right, but unfortunately it could only brake the front wheel. A moment of carelessness could easily lead to a forward somersault over the handlebars. The safety factor was worryingly low. In comparison, the cable brakes could engage both front and rear wheels, offering double the safety. But the cost, well, it shot right up. Of course, these were all still handmade. If the mass production problem could be solved in the future, cable brakes would undoubtedly become the mainstream choice, safe and practical. After another week of toiling away, by mid-April of the second year of the John Ewan era, when the early summer breeze already carried a touch of warmth, the brakes, basket, and both front and rear seats were finally all sorted out. Lastly, a single-leg kickstand was added, and a brand-new bicycle was complete. While these parts were being made, the craftsmen at the Research Institute hadn't been idle either. Cobbling together leftover materials, they assembled a dozen or so more. The first batch totaled 20 bicycles. 12 were 28-inch macho models, 6 with a high crossbar, and 6 with a double-sloping top tube. They came in 2 colors, black and green. The black ones were a mix of black, white, and red, designed to be strikingly cool. The green ones featured dark green paired with the original color of steel, for an understated luxury. The remaining 8 were 26-inch ladies' models, with a step-through frame made of 2 curved tubes at the front, making it convenient for women to get on and off. The frame, welded from steel tubes, was very sturdy. No need to worry about it falling apart. The ladies' models boasted even more colors: sky blue, grass green, duck egg yellow, and bright red, with 2 of each color, one equipped with each of the 2 brake types. Paired with natural wood-colored baskets, hey, a wave of fresh modern pastoral chic just washed over you. Looking at the 20 bicycles lined up before them, the craftsmen from the Research Institute all stood ramrod straight, bursting with pride and yelped with excitement. Chief, quick, try it. Try this foot-pedaled vehicle. What's it like to ride? None of us know how yet. You quickly ride a couple of laps and show us what it's like. All right, I'll give it a try. As soon as the 20 bicycles were ready, everyone was chattering and urging you to test ride one. Your own heart was pounding like a trapped rabbit, full of excitement. Having inexplicably transmigrated to this God-forsaken primitive society, relying on your own intelligence and ingenuity, and everyone's hard work, you'd finally managed to cobble together a semblance of modern civilization. Bicycles. Such a wonderfully familiar thing. Now you could ride one again. He picked a 28-inch men's bicycle with a sloping top tube, steadied the handlebars, flicked the kickstand open with his toe with a snap, swung a long leg over, and elegantly mounted the seat. The knee-length robe he was wearing was a bit cumbersome, so he simply tucked the front and back hems of his robe into his waistband, revealing 2 long legs, and started pedaling with grunts of effort. The moment your feet left the ground and the bicycle moved forward, steadily, the craftsmen from the Research Institute erupted with a collective "Ow!" shout. They were all gesticulating wildly, cheering at the top of their lungs as if it were New Year's. But you, riding the bicycle, sighed silently to yourself. This bike still has quite a few problems. The first impression was heavy, damn heavy. Pedaling it felt like turning a millstone. It took a ton of effort, but then it dawned on you. It wasn't just the steel tubing material, the road surface was also to blame. Around the Lakehart Island Research Institute, it was all compacted dirt paths, which were okay for riding. If it were on the brick and stone roads in the city, it would probably be much smoother. Then there was the seat. It was hard on the backside. Modern bicycle seats are padded with soft sponge. This thing made of leather-wrapped sheet iron and wood really wasn't great. Luckily, there were springs underneath. Otherwise, after riding a few kilometers on a mountain road, your butt would surely be jolted into 8 pieces. But this wasn't a major flaw. At worst, whoever wrote it could sew a cotton cushion themselves. Those who could afford a bicycle wouldn't be short of money for a cushion, would they? The brakes, however, were decent. The one you were riding had cable-actuated dual brakes. Both, front and rear, were quite responsive. The deceleration effect was excellent. Overall, although it had a basket full of shortcomings, at least it was a step from nothing to something. Only by having this thing could one figure out how to improve it, right? Problems had to be identified through practical use and then ways found to solve them. However, you were also pondering the marketability of these bicycles. You reckoned not many people would want to ride them. Those wealthy, titled gentlemen wouldn't. Riding a horse be far more appealing? So much more prestigious. Why would they bother laboriously riding this lump of iron? And what about ordinary commoners? They hardly left their village or city all year round. What use would they have for a bicycle? This thing was actually most suitable for the craftsmen in various workshops. They needed to commute to and from work. Those living a bit further away might possibly get one to ride. Besides, they earned wages so they could save up and afford one. As for the farming folk, they went out so few times a year you could count them on one hand. The likelihood of them buying a bicycle was practically zero. But for your farmer brethren, tricycles would absolutely be a bestseller. Think about it. Farming involves carrying manure, fetching water, and moving tools, and during harvest, they have to transport grain and straw home. To have a tricycle at such times would be like receiving charcoal in snowy weather. A true godsend. Speaking of which, in these times, if a family had an animal-drawn cart, it would be like owning a Maserati today. If someone could ride in an enclosed carriage, that would definitely be Rolls-Royce level. It wasn't that flatbed carts were so expensive. It was that the cost of raising a large draft animal was terrifying. When not working, Feeding them some straw was fine, but if they were pulling carts and doing heavy labor, they needed to be fed concentrated feed like beans, barley, and alfalfa. The feed for one large draft animal could support 5 strong men. Which ordinary family could afford that? Tricycles were different. They had almost negligible running costs. Simple daily maintenance was enough. Most importantly, no draft animal was needed. You could ride it yourself. If the price were more affordable, they would definitely sell like crazy in the Han tribe. Much better than bicycles in that regard. However, since the bicycles were made, they couldn't just be left to gather dust. You figured first establish a postal system in the Han tribe to deliver mail for the common people and also facilitate the transmission of official news. Then, equip the mail carriers with bicycles first. Let them ride around the main streets and small alleys to get them seen and familiar to people. Later, when the technology matured and production increased, bicycles could probably be popularized. So, you rode along, mulling over these various thoughts in your head. In your ears were the craftsmen's cheers, as loud as a roaring tsunami. Watching their chief ride like the wind in the open space, other bolder craftsmen also felt their hands itching to try. They pushed a bicycle out and started attempting to ride. Unfortunately, this business of balance really wasn't something one could master in a short while. Moreover, they treasured these bicycles as if they were their own sons. They'd rather use their own bodies as cushions than let a bike fall even once. Even if just sitting on it and scuffing along the ground with their tiptoes, they were as happy as a 200 Jin, a unit of weight, approxim 0.5 kilometers kid, to better. Promote this foot-pedaled vehicle. You stayed at the research institute for another week, watching as the craftsmen, with much clanging and banging, hammered out another 5 tricycles. Only then contentedly did you take these freshly made treasures and return to Hanyang City. As soon as your voice fell, the farmer's eyes lit up. A carrying capacity of 400 to 600 Jin, and it could also carry 4 or 5 people, perfectly, adequate for daily hauling of goods and carrying people. Most importantly, you guaranteed that this tricycle was easy to learn. Well now. Many of them immediately started rubbing their hands, eager to get on and try. You casually pointed to a few people and let them get on to experience it. Those lucky few immediately started riding joyfully around the open space at the docks. This tricycle thing, it's stable. 3 wheels planted there. As long as you weren't trying to drift around corners, it was hard to tip over. However, you recalled that in your previous life, quite a few people had complained that tricycles were hard to ride, saying that once on it, it felt like they were drunk, always veering to one side, unable to go straight at all. This issue, actually, had little to do with the tricycle itself. You mused to yourself, this was probably some kind of inexplicable phenomenon. If you learned to ride a tricycle first, then a bicycle, no problem. But if you learned to ride a bicycle first, then tried a tricycle, hey, you'd most likely end up performing an S-shaped wobble. You couldn't figure out the exact principle behind it. Anyway, this rule of thumb was pretty much spot on. The folks of the Han tribe were seeing a pedal-powered vehicle for the first time, so riding the tricycle was incredibly smooth for them. They got on, pedaled a couple of times, and off they went, whoosh whoosh, with no difficulty at all. Turning the handlebars made it turn, much more obedient than shouting at an animal. The lever handbrake on the front main bar stopped it with a squeeze. Very responsive. To sum up, you could learn to use this thing at a glance. It was even less trouble than pushing a wheelbarrow. There were also those who enjoyed stirring things, up and insisted on testing the tricycle's load capacity. Several people piled into the rear cargo bed all at once, although the rider's face turned beet red and he was pedaling furiously, panting hard. The tricycle actually still moved steadily along the flat ground. Seeing that all its functions were excellent, the folks were as happy as if they'd found gold, ingots, and began chattering all at once, asking about the price. Each of them was mentally working their abacus, wondering how long they'd have to save money to bring this treasure home. As for the price, you couldn't give a definite answer yet. After all, these few were handmade samples, and the cost was very high. But you patted your chest and assured them that this tricycle would definitely be cheaper than buying a draft animal. Once these words were out, everyone felt more reassured. For those who coveted draft animals but were short on cash, this tricycle was simply a perfect, tailor-made substitute. Waving goodbye to the folks, you continued with your convoy towards Hanyang City. You weren't stingy with the few tricycles you brought. You dropped one off in each of Liuyang Commandery, Weishan Commandery, Ruyang Commandery, and Hanyang Commandery, giving them to the local government offices for logistics and procurement use. This way, the tricycles would be seen by the common people every day, becoming familiar sights before mass production, and serving as a wave of free advertising. The bicycles weren't left idle either. You picked a few and distributed them to the junior officials in the government offices. They rushed about every day, handling official business and investigating data. Running errands on a bicycle was much more economical and convenient than riding a horse. You yourself, with your personal guards, took the remaining bicycles back home. As soon as you entered the courtyard gate, you saw Xiao Die and Zhan Ying playing wildly in the courtyard with the two kids. In the nearby pavilion, Tang Yao, back from school, was diligently practicing calligraphy, with Xiao Di occasionally going over to offer a bit of guidance. The backyard was a picture of harmony. You pushed the bicycle into the courtyard. Watching this heartwarming scene, your hands weren't idle. You casually flicked the bell on the handlebars. Ding-a-ling-ling. The clear ringing instantly broke the courtyard's tranquility. Little Luo Cheng, wearing a small black gauze cap and split-crotch pants, was squatting with his bottom in the air, studying ants moving house on the ground. Hearing the sound, his little head shot up. Seeing it was you, he immediately clapped his chubby little hands, toddled over unsteadily on his short legs, and threw himself at your leg, calling out in a child's sweet, lisping voice, "Daddy." "Ayo, my good boy. Did you miss Daddy?" You bent down and scooped him into your arms, supporting his soft little bottom with one hand, asking with a wide smile. Little Luo Cheng stretched out his small arms and expertly wrapped them around your neck, mumbling indistinctly, "Missed you, Daddy, I want to play with this." The little guy perfunctorily planted a smack of a kiss on your cheek, his chubby little finger pointing at the bell you had just rung, his eyes sparkling. "You little rascal. I bet you didn't really miss Daddy. You were just after the new toy. Daddy brought back, weren't you?" You feigned anger and gave his little bottom a light pat. It felt springy and soft to the touch. "Really? Missing Daddy is real, and wanting the toy is also real." Little Luo Cheng adjusted the small cap on his head, looking at you with utmost seriousness, his gaze the epitome of purity and innocence. "Huh, you little tyke. You're quite honest." You were tickled pink by his earnest little demeanor. "Mommy said one must be honest. Daddy, quick, let me play with that." "Ha ha 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 ha. All right. Seeing as you're so honest and obedient, I'll let you play for a bit." You laughed and lifted him higher so he could reach the bell on the handlebars. The little fellow's face immediately lit up with a wide smile, and he started ringing the bell, ding-a-ling-ling, grinning foolishly and showing off. "Mommy, sister, look, I made it ring." Little Luo Lan, who was on the swing with Zhan Ying nearby, couldn't hold back either. She kicked her short legs, struggling to come over. With a rustle, the whole family gathered around. You smoothly extended your other arm and gathered your daughter into your embrace too. Hey, one in each arm, children gathered around your knees. This little life was simply wonderful. "Husband, is this the new vehicle you've been tinkering with? Why does it look so peculiar?" Xiaodi also came closer with a smile, curiously examining the bicycle. "Yes, this vehicle only has two wheels, one in front and one behind. Can it even stand upright?" Zhan Ying, while steadying little Luo Cheng, who was still wrestling with the bell, also asked curiously. "Greetings, Chief Han." Tang Yao, who had been practicing her large character calligraphy in the pavilion, also hurried over and curtsied upon seeing you return. She had learned the Han tribe's etiquette quite well. Everyone's fine, that's good. Seeing you all safe and sound puts my mind at ease." You greeted them, cleared your throat, and began to introduce it. Lately, I've been busy with the mince production line, and on the side, I whipped up these few vehicles. This is called a bicycle, also known as a foot pedal vehicle. Don't judge it by its homely appearance, it's incredibly useful. This thing doesn't need an animal to pull it. A person can ride it. It's faster than walking and saves effort too. You'll see in a moment. This vehicle, you ride it to move? Xiaodi's eyes went wide as saucers. She had seen pulled carts and pushed carts, but a vehicle you ride on that doesn't need an animal to pull it was truly unheard of and unseen. She couldn't even imagine such a thing was possible. She had only heard of riding horses, oxen, donkeys, or elephants. Those were living creatures at least. How could one ride this legless, lifeless lump of iron? Could you possibly whip it a couple of times? Hey, eye-opener, right? Today, your husband will show you what a bicycle is all about. You grinned triumphantly, had Xiaodai and Zhan Ying watch the two kids, then hopped on the bike yourself and zipped around the courtyard a couple of times with a whoosh whoosh, drawing gasps of amazement from the entire family, young and old. Their eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Husband, this bicycle is truly miraculous. Xiaodi walked over, beaming. Sister Tang Yao is intelligent and kind-hearted. She must surely admire your ingenuity as well. Husband, do you have any long-term plans for her? After all, her status is special. She can't just keep living here in this ambiguous way. A marriage alliance? The thought hadn't even crossed your mind. It wasn't that you were particularly noble or looked down on Tang Yao. Rather, you figured that with the Han tribe's current strength, crushing the Tang tribe would be a matter of minutes. There was no need to resort to such a demeaning political tactic as a marriage alliance. To speak frankly, in this ignorant and backward primitive era, Tang Yao's looks, combined with her current Han tribe attire, plus her knowledge and kindness, definitely made her above average in appearance. If you said you weren't even slightly tempted, you'd be lying through your teeth. However, deliberately trying to woo her just to annex the Tang tribe was just too uninteresting. What you wanted was a love born of mutual affection, not a conspiracy involving forcing yourself on her. If Tang Yao was also interested in you and, like the Han tribe, then you'd naturally be happy to have her. But that was a separate matter from the plan to subdue the Tang tribe. You made your stance clear, and Xiaodai didn't press the matter further. You didn't intentionally distance yourself from or get closer to Tang Yao, so your relationship remained somewhat lukewarm, letting nature take its course. You were so busy you could barely keep up and honestly didn't have much spare time to dwell on matters of the heart. On the fourth day after your return to Hanyang City, a small, two-masted sailboat, unnoticed by anyone, slipped in from the north. It hadn't taken the day's waterway upstream of the Liuyang River, but had drifted down from the upper reaches of the Ruyang River, dropping anchor directly at the Hanyang City docks. As soon as the boat docked, someone galloped into the city to inform you. By the time you pedaled your precious bicycle to the docks, you finally understood the boat's origin. It turned out to be from that rascal Yu Yi's frontline base. Last year, right after Yu Yi left, you had ordered him to bring back some crystals for you when he passed by the crystal mine on his way back. As it happened, that fellow spent all of last year scouring the world for people, but ended up with nothing. He was probably too ashamed to face you, so the crystal mine matter got delayed. However, before last winter, you sent him reinforcements and supplies, and the rascal finally remembered this unfinished task. So as soon as the ice and snow melted in spring, Yu Yi quickly sent people to dig a boatload of crystals, and eagerly had them delivered to you. As for himself, he still hadn't dared to show his face. It was unclear whether he was genuinely busy, or deliberately avoiding you. He was probably afraid of delaying your important affairs, and thus didn't dare to return and face punishment. Looking at the boat full of sparkling crystals, you didn't make things difficult for the crew. They were just errand runners. There was no point in giving them a hard time. The proper course of action was to quickly turn these lumps of stone into useful treasures. Although the Han tribe could now produce various glass products, glass made from quartz sand was still inferior to crystal glass in certain properties. This wasn't due to a lack of craftsmanship, but to the inherent nature of the materials themselves. A gift from nature, nothing to be done about it. You hadn't had anyone work on telescopes precisely because you were waiting for this batch of, or undoubtedly for something like a telescope, which demands extremely high light transmittance. Ordinary glass simply wouldn't cut it. But crystal ore was different. Its composition was as pure as first love, 99.99999% silicon dioxide, ensuring the absolute purity of crystal glass. Whether for light transmission or heat resistance, crystal glass was leagues ahead of ordinary glass. Furthermore, besides making optical instruments, heat-resistant crystal glass was also excellent for making beakers and test tubes for chemistry labs. Some experiments required heating, and the 500 or 600 degree melting point of ordinary quartz glass was simply insufficient. This was another reason why you had specifically instructed Yu Yi to get some crystals last year. With the rapid advancement of the Han tribe's shipbuilding and seafaring endeavors, the demand for telescopes was becoming increasingly urgent. Now that the materials were available, this powerful tool, nicknamed the 1,000-mile eye, could finally be put on the agenda. However, you didn't remember many of the technical details about telescopes. You remembered a fair bit of chemistry, but your middle school physics knowledge about lenses had long since been returned to the gym teacher. The only thing you could recall was that telescopes seemed to be made of a combination of convex and concave lenses. If you stuck two convex lenses together, you'd probably get a microscope. Also, was a straight tube telescope convex-convex-concave, or convex-concave-convex? You couldn't remember. Military binoculars, because the eyepiece was closer to the object. Lens needed to refract the light, requiring a prism in between. Not remembering wasn't a problem. Fortunately, the Han tribe's current research institute was no longer a pushover. It possessed a certain level of research and development capability. Science was never about divining results through guesswork, but about groping for truth through repeated experimentation. So, at worst, a few more tries would eventually lead to the most suitable combination and data. Thus, with a flourish of your brush, you jotted down some concepts, basic theories, and general experimental directions for telescopes. Then you immediately dispatched a personal guard on horseback to deliver these important materials and the entire boatload of crystals to the Lakehart Island Research Institute. The first step in research and development wasn't to rush into finding lens combinations, but to first use these crystals to try firing a batch of concave and convex lenses with various focal lengths. Only with these parts and equipment could the next stage of experimental verification proceed. When the top craftsmen of the Han tribe at the Research Institute received this heavenly scripture from you, they were as ecstatic as if they'd been injected with chicken blood, overjoyed. They hadn't expected the chief's imagination to break through the heavens again, actually wanting to use glass to create an artificial 1,000-mile eye. And from the sound of it, this thing actually had a real chance of succeeding, because several people in the Research Institute had previously participated in the manufacture of convex lenses. Those were magnifying glasses you had specifically asked them to make for carving currency templates. When those craftsmen had produced the magnifying glasses back then, they too had been amazed by the magical effect of the device. They pondered the information you provided, combined it with their own understanding, and figured that the principle of this 1,000-mile eye was probably to use the special effect of a magnifying glass to infinitely enlarge distant objects that were originally too small to see clearly, allowing people to see them clearly from far away. Thinking about it this way, hey, it was theoretically entirely feasible. Having reached this conclusion, the group of researchers was instantly fired up with enthusiasm. That very day, they established a telescope special project team, and without further ado, first used molds to clank out a batch of lenses of various types. The information you provided also specifically mentioned, for lenses of the same diameter, if the center thickness is different, the focal length will change, meaning the magnification power will be different. This kind of miraculous theory further intoxicated these researchers, as if they had discovered a new continent. They weren't after money or honor. The chief had already given them enough of those things. They weren't lacking. The reason these researchers stayed devotedly at the Research Institute was because here, they could frequently come into contact with the various black technologies mastered by the chief. This greatly satisfied their curiosity about the various rules and laws of this world. People, after all, always have a thirst for knowledge. It's just that everyone is interested in different directions. After assigning this research and development plan, you temporarily washed your hands of it. After several months of construction, the Han tribe's new university town was almost completed and ready for use. You had already planned the development direction for the medical school, but as for other disciplines, you hadn't had time to think them through carefully. Now it was time to arrange these advanced education systems. Literary creation was something that couldn't be rushed. It required time to slowly mature. But as for various administrative management talents, the Han tribe was currently crying out for them. The shortage was immense. An agricultural college was a must. Architecture and water conservancy couldn't be neglected either. To develop ocean shipping in the future, a naval architecture college or a marine administration college would also be needed. In addition, a College of Science and Engineering for the pursuit of truth, and a political science and law major for maintaining social order. These were all essential needs. Not a single one could be missing. Many of the students with good grades from the Han tribe's previous schools had already entered the workforce. Some became minor officials, some became skilled craftsmen, and others directly joined the Research Institute as calculators. The Research Institute treasured talent good at mathematics. Many students participated in work while continuing their studies. Now for the long-term development of the tribe, these disciplines had to be systematically sorted and organized. You pondered, you had to strive to disseminate as much of the Han tribe's education system and the knowledge in your head as possible within your lifetime to benefit future generations. The convoy of several bicycles majestically crossed the wooden bridge and rode for about an hour on the country path, and the family arrived at Suifu County in Ruyang Commandery. The main construction of the medical school was already completed, and your precious medicinal herbs had been transported to the plantation in advance by others. By the time you arrived, in force, the transplanting of the medicinal herbs was basically almost finished. Transplanting plants is a job that depends on the right time and place. Cloudy days are best. Unfortunately, the heavens hadn't been obliging these past few days. It was sunny and scorching every day. The charlatans at the Imperial Observatory did some finger-pinching calculations and said not to expect rain in the coming days either. There was no choice. To get these delicate medicinal herbs to take root as quickly as possible, you could only order the work to be done at night. This was to prevent them from being dried into medicinal herb jerky by the harsh sun during daytime transportation. This medicinal herb garden, besides the dozen or so rare medicinal materials brought by Tang Yao, there were also many local specialties collected by the Han tribe over the years, most of which were friendly contributions from the Snake tribe. Back then, for example, there was a thing that looked like ginger, which was a miracle drug for external injuries. Dried and ground into powder, sprinkled directly onto a wound, it stopped bleeding and reduced inflammation with outstanding results. Similarly, there was the tree that Big Tree had mentioned, which oozed red sap and could be used to clean and disinfect wounds. Its anti-inflammatory effect was also good, but it was a bit lacking in terms of stopping bleeding. Others included the extremely poisonous thorn vine and a type of stinky grass with its own bioweapon properties. It was said that the juice of this plant had the dual effects of reviving consciousness and inducing vomiting. The description of its effects was simple and crude, literally. An unconscious person who smelled it would be directly awakened by the stench. A conscious person who smelled it would perform an on-the-spot vomit. It was practically a walking emetic, too terrifying. However, everything has its use. This stinky grass was undoubtedly a rare and valuable medicine for first aid and detoxification. Unfortunately, this thing had to be picked and used fresh. Perhaps because its strong stench evaporated too quickly, it lost its effect in a few minutes. The juice also evaporated rapidly when exposed to air, greatly limiting its range of use. Therefore, this medicinal herb garden not only had to grow stinky grass, but also research how to prepare medicines. From the most primitive method of grabbing a handful of grass and eating it raw, to refining it into proprietary Chinese medicines with a long shelf life and convenient use. This was also one of the important research topics for the medical school. There were many similar medicinal materials, with a wide variety of strange and wonderful effects. Most were life wisdom passed down through generations by small tribes. Just like when you were injured, and the previous chief proactively found dandelions for you to heal. Although most tribes had no written tradition, their orally transmitted survival skills contained a wealth of valuable knowledge about medicinal herbs. Think about it. Even wild cats know to go up the mountain to find medicinal herbs to eat when they are sick. Humans, as highly intelligent animals, couldn't possibly be dumber than cats, right? Over decades, centuries, or even millennia, which tribe didn't have a few life-saving medicinal herbs up its sleeve? It was just that the effects of most medicinal herbs were largely similar, with a lot of repetition. After touring the thriving plantation, you led the large tour group to the animal breeding center. The poor creatures the Han tribe used for medical experiments were mainly rabbits and dogs. These two types of animals were cheap, reproduced quickly, and had high yields, making them excellent choices for experimental consumables. As for the white mice commonly seen in laboratories in your previous life, you hadn't actually seen any live ones in this world. Besides experimental animals, the Animal Breeding Center also raised many animal medicinal materials that could be used in medicine. For example, poisonous snakes, snake sloughs, cicada sloughs, toad skins, sheep horns, turtle shells, deer antlers, donkey hide gelatin, and various poisonous insects. These were all very useful medicinal materials. When little Luo Cheng saw the coiled poisonous snakes in the cages, he screamed, "Wah, wah," in terror, his little face deathly pale. But his big, dark, glistening eyes couldn't help but curiously peer closer to the cages, wanting to see what was going on. This contradictory psychology of being timid yet loving a spectacle, when displayed by a toddler under 2 years old, had an inexplicably cute charm. Leaving the menagerie, the group strolled over to the teaching buildings and dormitories. The layout of these buildings was similar to other schools, nothing special. But the bright glass in the windows drew gasps of admiration. These had all been rushed out by the craftsmen at the Lakehart Island Glass Workshop, working overtime. As for the affiliated hospital outside the campus, it was currently under construction with great enthusiasm. Fortunately, the medical school hadn't officially enrolled students yet, so it didn't matter much if the hospital wasn't open for business temporarily. Speaking of which, the feud between Moden, the Shin tribe, and the Han tribe was growing deeper and deeper, and the intelligence networks between the two sides had long been severed. The Jin Wu Wei, elite guards, Chen Fu, lurking undercover deep within the Shin tribe's upper echelons, in particular, were having an even harder time. They held high positions, and their every move was under the watchful eyes of the Shin tribe's top leaders. Want to use an Azuka giant eagle to transmit messages? That was no different from sticking a sign on your forehead saying, "I am a spy," too conspicuous. Therefore, liaising with these high-level undercover agents had always relied on the most primitive method of person-to-person transmission. But as the Shin tribe's wariness towards the Han tribe grew ever stronger, the method of secretly contacting them under the guise of merchants, which had been possible before, was now completely unviable. So old Niu Wei felt quite frustrated too, having received no news about the Han tribe for a long time. Back in winter, he had vaguely heard that Chieftain Shin wanted to rope in Moden to stir up trouble in the Han tribe's Kaiyuan commandery. Later, news gathered by other undercover brothers also confirmed this. The Shin tribe was secretly funneling supplies to Moden through the hidden bridge on Bamboo Island, and even sent 3,000 bamboo-armored soldiers to the grasslands in winter to join the fray, preparing for a major operation. These bamboo-armored soldiers were all elite warriors, from the clans of the chieftains' factions' Grand Elders. And as key figures under the Grand Elders, how could the Jin Wu Wei, elite guards, spies not know about this? Unfortunately, they had temporarily lost contact with their organization, so this crucial intelligence couldn't be sent out, leaving them anxiously wringing their hands. In the end, they had no choice but to inform Niu Wei first. After all, Niu Wei's act of prostrating himself before his own chief was well known to these spies closest to the Shin tribe's high command. Upon receiving the news, Niu Wei, however, remained remarkably calm, not worried about the Han tribe in the slightest. In his view, no matter how many men Modun and the Shin tribe mustered, conquering Kaiyuan commandery, dream on. Even if they got incredibly lucky and broke through, the Han tribe would at most lose a piece of land. Given the Han tribe's immense wealth and resources, finding another spot by the lake to build a new city would only take an extra 2 or 3 years. A piece of cake. It wasn't surprising that Niu Wei was so confident. He had stayed in the Han tribe for over a year and had thoroughly studied the true purpose of a city, defense. With the current primitive siege methods, trying to breach a Han tribe city? Not chance. It was his old habit of putting himself in others' shoes. When he lived in Hanyang City, he'd spend his idle time staring at the city defenses, mentally simulating countless siege scenarios. His final conclusion was, as long as the city had ample food and supplies, no one could break through. Kaiyuan Commandery's city was even more of an anomaly, a game-breaking existence. Its geographical location was superb, backed by a lake and waterway. The semicircular city wall extended directly into the lake, even enclosing the docks, making it as solid as a metal rampart. Moreover, on the city's front, it was said there was currently only a towering inner city, and an outer city was planned to be built around it in the future. Niu Wei didn't know if the outer city was completed, but even with only the inner city, Modun wouldn't be able to crack it, because if the Han tribe wished, they could continuously send troops and supplies to Kaiyuan City via the waterway from the lake. Even if Modun besieged it for 10 or 8 years, Kaiyuan City could thrive comfortably with the lake at its back. Modun's biggest weakness was his lack of a navy. If the Han tribe had a sworn enemy on the water, who then collaborated with the cavalry on the grasslands, perhaps there might have been a chance. Unfortunately, such a scenario was simply impossible. Furthermore, although Niu Wei was full of confidence in Kaiyuan City, he also had a little ulterior motive. It could even be said that he wished for the Shin tribe and Modun to join forces and cause trouble for the Han tribe. This way, the relationship between the three parties would surely take a sharp downturn. Given his blind faith in the Han tribe's strength, the Han tribe absolutely could not lose. By then, both Modun and the Shin tribe would have to obediently kneel at the Han tribe's feet and sing songs of surrender. Perhaps he, old Niu, could even seize the opportunity to regain his freedom and escape this accursed prisoner status. Sure enough, events unfolded pretty much as he had predicted. He had originally thought the Han tribe would choose to defend the city, engage in a war of attrition with Modun's allied forces, drag things out, and eventually wear down the enemy. But in reality, the Han tribe didn't play by the book at all. They directly brought out their cannons and fought Modun head-on outside the city. Although the process was different from what he had imagined, the result, well, all roads lead to Rome, and it was even more tragic than he had thought. The Han tribe actually wiped out the once invincible Modun. The Shin tribe also suffered heavy losses and was greatly weakened. When the news arrived, the Shin tribe's high command was collectively stunned and panicked. They began to truly fear the Han tribe's terrifying combat power, living in constant trepidation, afraid that the Han tribe might attack them one day if they were in a bad mood. Niu Wei's heart was also in turmoil. Should he cooperate with his undercover brothers to escape, or honestly stay here and wait for the Han tribe to come and liberate him? For a moment he fell into deep thought, his brain cells dying by the thousands. Meanwhile, in the Shin tribe's chieftain's main tent, the atmosphere was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Several grand elders were arguing vehemently, their expressions a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. How on earth did the Han tribe do it? Didn't their shabby city only have 4,000 or 5,000 people? Modin and our grand army combined had a full 60,000. 60,000! How did they win? Chieftain Shin was still stubbornly fixated on this, though in his heart he knew the truth as clear as day. He just wasn't willing to accept this cruel reality, trying to numb himself this way. Since he couldn't accept it now, he might as well subconsciously hypnotize himself, tell himself that all this was an illusion. Fake, all fake. However, the grief-stricken expressions of the other elders, as if their parents had died, mercilessly dragged him back to reality. Now was not the time to evade responsibility. Great chieftain, there's no point in dwelling on these trivial details anymore. Elder Jin looked worried, sighed heavily, and emphasized, according to the intelligence gathered from all our spies, in this battle of Kaiyuan Commandery, we lost everything, right down to our underpants. Modin not only had his entire army annihilated, but he even lost his old lair. Now the Han tribe is already on Modin's former territory, picking the most auspicious spot to start building a city. Judging by their actions, it doesn't look like they're there for sightseeing. Whether Modin was dead or alive, they no longer cared. What they cared about most now was the fate of their precious warriors they had sent out. Had they all died heroically? For if they had all died in battle, that would be one thing. If not, should they try to ransom them back? This thought had just surfaced when it was ruthlessly snuffed out by the others. We don't know if those warriors are dead or alive, but we absolutely cannot admit that they were sent by our Shin tribe. Isn't that blatantly provoking the Han tribe, pointing at their noses and saying, "Hey, it was me behind this scheme against you"? Put away your foolish idea. Do you think the Han tribe is stupid, unable to see that we were behind it? Don't forget the equipment Modun's allied forces used. Which of those isn't a specialty of our Shin tribe? Besides, once our warriors are captured by the Han tribe, do you expect them to keep their mouths shut and protect the tribe's secrets? Don't be naive. Whether the Han tribe knows or not isn't important. What's important is the Han tribe's current attitude towards us. Is there any movement from the envoys sent to the Han tribe? Well, there hasn't been any movement yet. You Quacher made this decision, naturally, with your own little calculations. The Han tribe had just finished a battle and was busy digesting the fruits of victory. The captured territories and population all needed proper management, and this wasn't something that could be done in a day or two. Besides, the sailors of the Fubo Guard still needed to intensify their training, and the herdsmen brought to Tuo High, Commandery also needed to be reorganized into an army, so now was not the best time for an all-out war with Bamboo Island. Although the Shin tribe could muster far fewer troops than Modin, fighting the Shin tribe was entirely different from fighting Modin. When beating Modin, the Han tribe was on a defensive counterattack. As long as they held off Modin's attack and protected the construction achievements of Kaiyuan Commandery, it was considered a win. Moreover, both sides went all in from the start in a decisive battle. The subsequent pursuit of Modun's remnants was mainly focused on individuals. But Bamboo Island was different. The Han tribe's strategic goal was complete occupation, wanting the entire land and population of Bamboo Island. Therefore, the required military force was much larger than for the battle on the grasslands. Think about it. Every place conquered would require troops to be stationed for garrisoning and maintaining order. Otherwise, just defeating Chieftain Shin's core faction wouldn't be very meaningful. You had long anticipated that the cowardly Shin tribe leaders would most likely not dare to confront the Han tribe head-on. If you were Chieftain Shin, you would definitely avoid a direct conflict with the Han tribe, using the advantages of fighting on home turf, relying on favorable timing, geographical advantages, and popular support to engage in guerrilla warfare and ambushes against the Han tribe. That would be the best strategy. The Shin tribe wanted to buy time, and didn't you want the same? Since both sides temporarily shared the same goal, a little cooperation wouldn't hurt. It would also provide a legitimate reason to promote the Han tribe's currency on Bamboo Island, saving the trouble of doing it all over again after occupation. Your reply quickly reached Shoya. Upon receiving the order, Shuya immediately began to haggle with Elder Sheng of the Shin tribe. But these negotiations were like buying vegetables at the market, a lot of back and forth, everyone wanting to get the better deal. How could it be settled in a day or two? Both sides engaged in a war of words, probing each other, trying to guess intentions until their heads ached. 2 days passed in a flash. The Shin tribe made an exorbitant demand, wanting shipbuilding technology directly. The Han tribe, of course, wasn't foolish and flatly refused, only agreeing to sell them a few small, dilapidated single-masted boats. That's right, sell, not give away for free. The Shin tribe wouldn't agree to that either, so Elder Chi had to send someone back to ask the great chieftain for instructions. But what he never expected was that his most trusted subordinate, the confidant he sent back to consult the great chieftain, not only brought back the great chieftain's instructions, but also secretly slipped Shoya a small note. News from Niu Wei. Well, I'll be damned. It turned out this fellow was also a Jin Wu Wei spy. Niu Wei had been imprisoned for nearly half a year. Learning that the Shin tribe's plan to join forces with Modin against the Han tribe had completely failed, and now they were preparing to fight the Han tribe to the death, he felt he could no longer sit idly by. If fighting broke out again this time, it would definitely be the final battle between the Han and Shin tribes. If he was still imprisoned, there would only be one outcome for him, croaking. So he wanted to escape. Having his undercover brothers help him break out of prison was naturally the best option, but Niu Wei had no direct authority to command them. Moreover, the fact that the Han and Shin tribes had reached this point today was largely due to his previous rash and short-sighted plan. He wasn't sure now what the Han tribe's attitude towards him was, or if they were still willing to help him out. So he didn't dare to act rashly. He only asked his undercover brothers to pass a message to the envoys, expressing his loyal desire to continue shedding his blood and sweat for the Han tribe. This news, just like that, was unknowingly delivered to Shoya by Elder Chi's confidant. Shuya, holding Niu Wei's plea for help, was also completely bewildered, not knowing what to do. He couldn't make the decision on this matter. Firstly, the Jin Wu Wei intelligence personnel were not under his command. If he rashly ordered Niu Wei's rescue and caused the spies to be exposed, the losses would be immense. You had to know, these spies had gone to great lengths to infiltrate the Shin tribe's high command, so he had to ask for your instructions first. Thus, Shuya, under the pretext of seeking the chief's instructions on negotiation terms, sent you another letter by express horse, reporting Niu Wei's plea for help in full detail and asking for your opinion. After receiving the letter, you also pondered for a long time. Was this fellow Niu Wei still worth rescuing? The answer was yes. This guy indeed had some unorthodox talent, but his brain tended to overheat. He was too impulsive and his actions and too eager for quick success. This could be seen both from his previous messing up of currency promotion and his personally leading a team to cause trouble in the Han tribe. Bringing him over to serve as a commandery governor or something similar should be no problem. Besides, after the full occupation of Bamboo Island in the future, a large number of officials would definitely be needed. In fact, the Han tribe's current officials were already stretched thin. There was no helping it. Development was too fast, and there was a shortage of people everywhere. No matter what kind of talent, the Han tribe was lacking. So even if Niu Wei had no other value, letting him be an official and govern the people of a region was still feasible. It was indeed necessary to rescue him, but intelligence personnel absolutely could not be risked to save him. The risk of exposure was too great, and the gain wouldn't justify the loss. Now was the negotiation period, and it was perfectly timed. If Niu Wei could be openly demanded at the negotiating table, that would be ideal. Your eyes lit up. A plan formed in your mind. You quickly wrote a reply and sent it to Shoya. After reading your reply, Shuya immediately understood. He promptly found Elder Chi, and the two sides began a new round of friendly consultations. Finally, after some arduous bargaining, the two sides reached an agreement. The Han tribe generously gifted the Shin tribe 4 sampans and provided priority purchase rights for 1 single-masted sailboat and 1 double-masted sailboat. In exchange, the Shin tribe agreed to allow the Han tribe to issue and circulate currency throughout its island and appoint Elder Shang Niu Wei to assist the Han tribe's envoys in promoting the currency. During this assistance period, Niu Wei's salary would be paid by the Han tribe, but Niu Wei must obey the Han tribe's orders. To put it bluntly, they ransomed Niu Wei with the purchase rights for 2 boats. Both sides had long been aware of Niu Wei's identity. They just hadn't pierced that thin layer of paper. When he was captured, it was done secretly under the cover of a dark and windy night. Even the common people of the Shin tribe didn't know that their elder Shang had long since become a prisoner. Learning that the Han tribe specifically asked for Niu Wei, Chieftain Shin was so angry, he almost exploded on the spot. Wasn't this blatantly telling the world that Niu Wei was a traitor who betrayed his own people? Chieftain Shin wished he could immediately drag Niu Wei out, chop him up, and feed him to the dogs. However, several old foxes, led by Elder Jin, stepped forward to smooth things over, advising Chieftain Shin to calm down. Niu Wei, whatever he knew or could be asked, had long been squeezed dry. Killing him now or not didn't make much difference. Since the Han tribe was willing to exchange the sale of boats for him, it was better to go with the flow and get rid of this hot potato. At least it could bring some tangible benefits back to the tribe. Chieftain Shin vented his anger on his chair, for a while, finally swallowed his resentment, and gritted his teeth to agree to the exchange terms. The rest followed logically. Niu Wei was openly and honorably released. However, when he was bidding farewell to Chieftain Shin, he was thoroughly berated and warned not to wag his tongue irresponsibly with the Han tribe. Otherwise, his family remaining in the Shin tribe might face dire consequences. Family. In Niu Wei's view, it wasn't that important anymore. As long as the Han tribe was still willing to use him, would he have to worry about not having a family? So, Niu Wei didn't bother arguing these useless points with Chieftain Shin and readily agreed. All he wanted now was to regain his freedom. As soon as possible, earn back the Han tribe's recognition and achieve glory once more. Niu Wei soon arrived at the envoy mission where Shou Ya was, but he didn't get involved in any nonsense about promoting currency. Instead, under the pretext of returning to the Han tribe to transport coins, he directly took a boat and slipped back to the Han tribe. He wanted to see you, and you happened to want to see him. For safety's sake, summoning him back to the Han tribe's homeland was, of course, the most prudent course of action. Meanwhile, just as Shou Ya was vigorously promoting the Han tribe's currency on Bamboo Island, far away in the north-central part of the mainland, in the Han tribe's homeland, came some exhilarating good news. The telescope you had people try to build was finally showing promise.